Every week, millions of people around the world watch football matches. Some are exciting, some are boring. Most of them, when they're done, they're just done.
But once or twice a season, there is a match that isn't really about football at all.
El Clásico, Barcelona versus Real Madrid, the most watched club fixture on the planet, with approximately 600 million people tuning in to witness this heated rivalry every time.
It's about a language that was banned, a culture almost erased.
A president that was executed, a city that used a football club just to stay alive.
This is that story.
To understand El Clásico, you must first understand the two cities behind it, and they could not be more different.
Barcelona is the capital of Catalonia, a region in the northeast of Spain. And we're not just talking about a different city. Catalonia had a different language, a different culture, and a sense of identity that was completely distinct from the rest of the country.
On the other side was Madrid, Spain's capital. It's been the seat of the centralized national power for hundreds of years, so the tension was created because Catalan was a region fighting to preserve its identity, while the government was pushing for one unified Spanish nation. The friction was always there.
Football just gave it a stage.
FC Barcelona was founded on the 29th of November 1899 by a group of Swiss, English, and Spanish footballers led by Juan Gamper. Real Madrid was created just over 2 years later, in 1902.
And the first match between them came almost immediately, during the Copa de la Coronación, a tournament held to celebrate the coronation of the King Alfonso XIII.
The match took place on the 13th of May, 1902.
Barcelona won the game 3-1.
The crowd was strongly against Barcelona, even cheering when their players fell. This showed how the matchup would become a rivalry for the ages.
But by the 1930s, this had become much more than a football game, because what happened next would change everything. In 1936, Spain was torn apart by a civil war. General Francisco Franco had launched a military coup against the elected government, the Second Spanish Republic, and after 3 years of brutal conflict, Franco seized control of the entire country.
What followed was over 40 years of authoritarian rule, and for the people of Catalonia, it was a very dark time.
Franco's regime suppressed regional identities across Spain. Catalan culture was one of its primary targets. The Catalan language was banned in public life. Regional freedoms were taken away. Everything had to be in Spanish, including education and media.
Imagine being told that the language your grandparents spoke, the one you grew up with at home, is now illegal in public. This is what Catalans were living under.
To publicly identify as Catalan was to invite persecution. The voice of an entire people had been silenced by law.
So where do you go when your voice is taken away? When your language is banned, your culture is illegal, and you have no political representation? For Catalans, the answer was Camp Nou. Football stadiums were one of the only public spaces where the regime's grip was slightly looser. And Barcelona FC became something much more than a sporting club. It was one of the few remaining places where Catalan identity could be celebrated and protected. The Catalan voices that had been silenced found their way into the stadium. So Barcelona adopted the phrase that would define them forever: Més que un club, more than a club.
This resistance had devastating consequences. Josep Sunyol was the president of FC Barcelona and a prominent member of the Republican left of Catalonia. In 1936, early in the Civil War, he was captured by Franco's forces while traveling near the front line. He was then executed without trial. They had killed the president of Barcelona FC. That shows how seriously the regime took Barcelona and the threat they represented.
And then there's the 1943 Copa del Rey. Barcelona and Real Madrid were facing each other in the semi-final. Madrid beat Barcelona 11-1. This is one of the worst defeats Barcelona has ever suffered.
Catalan accounts tell of threats from regime officials before the match. Barcelona players have spoken about how they were warned about the consequences of winning. This makes it a highly controversial result.
Whether or not you accept the full account, it's clear that while under the tyrannical rule of Franco, the power dynamic between these two clubs was never just about football. It was always shaped by political power.
But it wasn't just crowds and governments that shaped this rivalry. Individual people used their voices to write some of the most iconic chapters of El Clasico history.
3 people in particular. Alfredo Di Stefano was an Argentine man, widely considered one of the greatest footballers to have ever lived. In the early 1950s, Barcelona thought they had signed him. However, Di Stefano went to Real Madrid instead. The full circumstances are unclear, but the consequences are not. What followed was 5 consecutive European Cups in the 1950s. He drove Madrid to become one of the most dominant forces in football history.
Another crucial voice belonged to a Dutch man named Johan Cruyff, arguably one of the most influential footballers of the 20th century. And in 1973, Ajax agreed to sell him to Real Madrid. But Cruyff refused. He was openly opposed to Franco's regime, and he refused to represent a club that was so strongly associated with it. He moved to Barcelona instead, clearly demonstrating his political stance. And on the 17th of February 1974, he walked into Real Madrid's home ground in a Barcelona shirt, and went on to give a stunning performance, scoring and helping lead the team to victory. Barcelona won, 5-0.
A third influential voice in this rivalry was Luis Figo. In the year 2000, he was one of the best players in the world. He was also one of the most beloved figures at FC Barcelona. But then he betrayed the club. He transferred to Real Madrid. The Madrid president, Florentino Perez, had made Figo the main selling point of his presidential campaign, promising that if he won the election, Figo would sign for Madrid. If Figo didn't, he would owe Perez $30 million of his own money. Despite trying to avoid it, the switch was inevitable. Figo walked into the Bernabeu in a white shirt, and when he went back to Camp Nou, as a Real Madrid player, the Barcelona fans expressed their strong opinions. They threw bottles, lighters, and mobile phones onto the pitch. Most memorably, in November 2002, as Figo prepared to take a corner, a pig's head was thrown onto the pitch.
When Franco died in 1975, Spain became a democracy. The Catalan language was restored and regional freedoms were returned.
But the rivalry never stopped carrying the weight of everything that came before. They couldn't simply forget the century of tension and history between the two clubs.
Every generation that has played El Clasico has inherited all that came before, and every generation has added their own chapter.
Lionel Andres Messi, a legend in football. He has scored 26 goals in El Clasico, the all-time top scorer in these fixtures. But it's not just the goals. In April 2017, at the Bernabeu, Messi scored a last-minute winner. And instead of a normal celebration, he pulled off his shirt and held it up to the Madrid fans. Messi rarely gives interviews. He doesn't speak publicly about politics, but in that moment, in that stadium, his voice was deafening.
And now the rivalry has entered a new era. Kylian Mbappe has joined Real Madrid, said to be the next Cristiano Ronaldo. And Barcelona has acquired a 17-year-old kid born in Catalonia itself, Lamine Yamal.
At a club that was a refuge for Catalan identity, the new icon is a product of Catalonia, the voice of the club and the voice of the region, all embodied in one player.
When a government bans your language and tells you that your culture and identity are illegal, you don't become silent, you find another way to speak.
For Catalans living under Franco's dictatorship, that other way was football. The voices that were silenced in the streets, in the schools, in the newspapers, they moved into the stadium. And for 90 minutes, they were louder than anything the regime could suppress.
That's why El Clasico is not just a football match. It's an expression of an otherwise silenced voice and how they fought back. From the executed president to the booing of the national anthem to the crowd throwing a pig's head onto the field, it shows that every moment of this rivalry was someone speaking up. The players change, the context changes, but the question at the heart of El Clasico has always been the same. Whose voice gets to be heard?